Back in 1994, the world of figure skating, a sport that's all about grace and beauty, was completely turned on its head by an act of pure, brutal violence. And let me tell you, this wasn't just some sports scandal. Oh no, it became a massive cultural moment that peeled back the curtain on the dark side of ambition. It's truly one of the most unforgettable stories of the 20th century.
And this was the cry that everybody heard. The raw, painful words of skater Nancy Kerrigan, caught on camera just seconds after she was attacked. That one simple, haunting question, why me, kicked off an absolute media firestorm and an investigation that would change the sport forever.
So let's set the scene. The date is January 6, 1994. We're at the Cobo Arena in Detroit during a practice session for the U.S. Figure Skating Championships. And this is the exact moment when a fierce rivalry spirals into a criminal act and an Olympic dream is almost completely destroyed.
Okay, so here's what happened. Nancy Kerrigan walks off the ice, and out of nowhere, a man ambushes her, striking her hard on her right knee with a police baton. The attack left her with a really badly bruised quadriceps tendon. It was so severe she had to withdraw from the championship, and suddenly her Olympic hopes were in serious, serious jeopardy.
But to really get why this attack happened, we have to understand the who. You see, the early 90s were this golden age for American figure skating. And right at the heart of it all were these two skaters on a total collision course, each one representing a totally different version of the American dream. And the contrast between them, it was just so stark. On one side, you've got Tonya Harding. She's from working-class Oregon, and her story is all about poverty and a really tough, difficult home life. Then on the other side, you have Nancy Kerrigan, who came from a stable, middle-class family up in Massachusetts. Their backgrounds just could not have been more different.
And what's wild is that their styles on the ice were a perfect reflection of their lives off of it. Tonya was just all raw, athletic power. She was the first American woman to land the incredibly hard triple axel. Nancy, meanwhile, was the absolute picture of classical grace and artistry. It was that classic matchup, pure power versus pure polish.
And you know who loved this narrative? The media. They went all in. They painted Tonya as this rebellious underdog, the tough outsider who was always fighting the system. And Nancy? She was crowned America's sweetheart, the polished favorite who was landing huge corporate deals with Campbell's and Reebok. It was a simple, powerful story that the public just couldn't get enough of.
So let's get back to the aftermath of the attack and see how this whole narrative just exploded. Because what came next wasn't just a sports story anymore. It turned into this massive media frenzy that basically transformed a criminal investigation into a global spectacle.
Well, the FBI investigation started, and pretty quickly it unraveled this plot that was honestly kind of amateurish but totally devastating. The masterminds were ID'd as Tonya's ex-husband, Jeff Gillooly, and her self-proclaimed bodyguard, a guy named Sean Eckhard. They hired Shane Stant to actually do the attack, and their motive was just chillingly simple: injure Nancy to clear a path for Tonya to win Olympic gold.
So, this is the big question, right? What did Tonya Harding actually know? At first, she denied everything. She acted shocked and even expressed sympathy for Nancy. But as the investigation started closing in, her story began to fall apart. Eventually, she admitted that she found out about the plot after it happened, and then failed to report it. And that admission right there is what cemented her role in the whole scandal.
Just look at this timeline. It really shows you how unbelievably fast everything happened. On January 6th, Nancy gets attacked. Just a couple weeks later, all the conspirators are arrested. And then, and this is the part that feels like it's straight out of a movie, both Tonya and a now recovered Nancy are named to the U.S. Olympic team. It set up this huge, globally televised showdown.
So, how did this whole crazy story end? Let's get into the final chapter, covering both the dramatic results at the Olympics and the legal fallout for every single person involved.
In what has to be one of the most incredible displays of resilience ever, Nancy Kerrigan, just 7 weeks after that brutal attack, skated onto the Olympic ice in Lillehammer and won the silver medal. It was this amazing, triumphant comeback that had millions of people all over the world glued to their TVs.
And for Tonya Harding, well, the consequences were absolutely career-ending. To stay out of jail, she pleaded guilty to hindering the prosecution. But then the U.S. Figure Skating Association came down with its own verdict. They stripped her of her national title, and the biggest blow of all, they banned her from the sport for life. This table really sums up the fates of everyone perfectly. Nancy Kerrigan became an Olympic medalist and had a successful pro career. Tonya Harding was banned from the sport she poured her life into.
And the guys who planned the attack, Gillooly and Eckhart, they both served time in prison. It was just a dramatic and definitive split in their paths.
Okay, so this all went down 3 decades ago. Why are we still so fascinated by it? Let's dig into this story's really complicated legacy and why it still has such a lasting impact on us.
One of the most real-world legacies was the immediate change in sports security. Seriously, that attack was a massive wake-up call. Major sporting events all over the world suddenly put in way stricter security protocols to protect their athletes, and a lot of those rules are still in place today.
But the cultural legacy, well, that's evolved too. In the last few years, especially with movies like I, Tonya, we've started to see a re-examination of Tonya Harding's side of the story. It's kicked off this whole new conversation about her abusive childhood and the media's really simplistic, class-based narrative. It's added all these new complex layers to a story that once seemed so black and white.
And really, that brings us to the final nagging question that keeps this whole story alive. Was Tonya Harding a cold-hearted villain? Was she a tragic victim of her circumstances? Or was she something way more complicated in between? 30 years later, there are still no easy answers. And the debate over her role, her responsibility, and her legacy, well, it's still going strong.